The alarm rang through the command center of the Valorian patrol station. Admiral Krentha lifted his head from the tactical display, his 4 eyes narrowing at the sudden interruption. For 300 years he had served in the Imperial Navy. Never once had this particular alarm sounded. "Report!" he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. A young officer at the sensor station turned, his face pale. "Admiral, we have gravitational anomalies at grid 774, multiple signatures, big ones." Krentha moved to the sensor display. The screen showed ripples in space itself, like stones thrown into a still pond. He had seen this before. Ships were arriving, many ships. "How many?" he asked. The officer swallowed hard. 30, sir. All large class. They just appeared at the edge of the Terran exclusion zone." The Terran exclusion zone. Krentha felt a chill run down his spine. That region of space had been silent for 200 years. The humans who once lived there had vanished without a trace. Most believed they had destroyed themselves in some war. The Empire had simply marked the area as forbidden and moved on. "Get me visual," Krentha commanded. The main screen flickered to life. There, hanging in the darkness of space, were 30 vessels unlike anything Krentha had ever seen. They were sleek and angular, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No running lights, no visible weapons, just faint blue trails coming from their engines. "Scan them," Krentha said. The sensor officer worked his console frantically. After a moment, he looked up with confusion. "Sir, the scans are bouncing off. I can't penetrate their hulls. It's like they're coated in something that blocks our sensors." Krentha studied the ships carefully. They sat perfectly still in formation, like predators waiting. He had fought in 17 campaigns across the galaxy. He knew the look of a military fleet when he saw one. "Open a channel. Standard galactic greeting protocols." The communications officer nodded and began transmitting. The message went out in 12 different languages, offering peaceful contact and requesting identification. They waited. Silence. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The mysterious ships did not move or respond. "Try again," Krentha ordered. The second message was sent. This time the wait was shorter. A voice crackled through the speakers, speaking perfect Valorian. The accent was strange, but the words were clear. "This is the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. We are humanity. We have returned." Every person in the command center froze. Humanity. The species that had vanished 2 centuries ago. The species that had refused to join the Empire and then disappeared completely. Krentha leaned forward. "This is Admiral Krentha of the Valorian Imperial Navy. We were told your species was extinct. Explain your presence here." Another pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time Krentha could hear the calm confidence in it. "We are here to observe and assess the current state of galactic affairs. We mean no harm, but we will not be interfered with." Before Krentha could respond, his communications officer interrupted. "Sir, I'm getting emergency calls from Fleet Command. They want you to hold position and await reinforcements." Krentha nodded slowly. Word was already spreading. Aboard the lead human vessel, Commander Lisa Martin stood on the bridge of the ship called Horizon. Around her, screens displayed data flowing in from hundreds of sensors. The Valorian patrol station, the nearby military outposts, the communication networks lighting up across the Empire. "They're panicking," said Captain Greg Hamilton, standing beside her. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes. He had commanded this mission for 3 years, preparing for this exact moment. "As expected," Lisa replied. She was younger, with sharp features, and a mind that processed tactical information faster than most computers. "The Empire doesn't know what to do with us." Greg watched as more Valorian ships began appearing on their sensors, jumping in from nearby systems. Within an hour, they would be surrounded by the Empire's military forces. He smiled slightly. "Let them come," he said quietly. "It's time they learned the truth." Lisa nodded and turned to her crew. "All ships, maintain position. Defensive protocols only. Do not engage unless fired upon." Across the fleet, 29 other captains received the same order. They had trained for this. They had prepared. Now they simply had to wait. Back on Valoria Prime, the capital world of the Empire, Council member Zixpora slammed her fist on the conference table. The Supreme Council had been called into emergency session. Around the circular chamber, representatives from all 7 major species of the Empire argued and shouted. "This is impossible," Zixpora hissed. Her species, the Zenthari, were known for their aggressive nature. "The humans are extinct. This must be some trick." An older council member, a being named Velmoth, shook his head. "Our historical records are clear. The humans sealed their borders 200 years ago after rejecting our offer to join the Empire. We sent ships to investigate. None returned. We assumed they had destroyed themselves or died out from isolation." "Then who are these ships?" demanded another council member. Velmoth pulled up old files on the chamber's main display. Images of humans appeared. They looked remarkably similar to several other bipedal species in the galaxy, but their eyes held something different: intelligence, stubbornness, pride. "These records say the humans were technologically primitive when we last contacted them," Velmoth continued. "They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. Their weapons were crude. Their civilization was small, contained to perhaps 50 systems at most." Zixpora studied the images. "And now they arrive with 30 warships that our sensors cannot scan. Either they advanced remarkably fast, or these are not the same humans." "There's only one way to find out," Velmoth said. "We send our full military force and demand answers. If they refuse, we eliminate them before they become a threat." The council voted. It was unanimous. The Empire would show these mysterious humans who ruled this galaxy. In space, Admiral Krentha watched as his small patrol group of 12 ships was joined by hundreds more. Cruisers, battleships, carriers. Within 6 hours, nearly 800 Imperial warships surrounded the 30 human vessels. Still, the humans did not move. They sat in perfect formation, silent and dark against the stars. Krentha received his orders from the Supreme Council. He took a deep breath and opened a channel to the human fleet. "Attention, human vessels. You are surrounded by the full might of the Valorian Empire. You will submit to inspection and questioning, or you will be destroyed. You have 1 hour to respond." On the horizon, Greg Hamilton listened to the ultimatum. Around him, his crew waited for orders. He looked at Lisa Martin. "Send our response," he said calmly. Lisa nodded and opened the channel. Her voice was clear and cold. "Negative. We are here to observe and assess. Do not interfere." Then the human fleet went silent again. The hour passed. The Empire waited for the humans to surrender. They did not. The Supreme Council chamber on Valoria Prime had never been so crowded. Every council member was present, along with military advisors, intelligence officers, and scientists. Holographic displays filled the air, showing the standoff happening at the edge of the Terran exclusion zone. Council member Zixpora stood at the center podium, her voice sharp with anger. 800 ships surround 30 human vessels, and yet our military commanders hesitate. Why have we not simply destroyed them? Admiral Krentha's image appeared on the main screen. He was still at the patrol station, commanding the fleet. "Council member, with respect, we know nothing about these ships. Our weapons may not be effective. I suggest we proceed with caution." "Caution?" Zixpora spat. "They have rejected our authority. That alone demands action." Velmoth, the older council member, raised a hand for silence. "Before we make any decisions, we need information. What do we actually know about these humans?" A young Valorian scientist named Pelthar stepped forward. He was nervous, clutching a data pad. Honorable Council, I have been analyzing the human vessels. What I have found is disturbing. Speak, Velmoth ordered. Pelthar activated his datapad, and images of the human ships filled the displays. First, their hull composition. We cannot scan it. This suggests technology far beyond our current capabilities. Second, their energy emissions. They are minimal, almost invisible. Yet these ships are clearly active and functional. This means their power systems are incredibly efficient. He paused, then continued. Third, and most concerning, is their formation. Look at how they're positioned. The displays zoomed in on the 30 human ships. They were arranged in a perfect geometric pattern, each ship exactly the same distance from the others. This formation, Pelthar said quietly, is optimal for both defense and offense. Every ship can cover every other ship. There are no weak points, no gaps. Whoever designed this understands military tactics at an advanced level. Zixpora waved dismissively. They have 30 ships. We have 800. The mathematics are simple. Pelthar hesitated, then spoke again. Council member, I have studied the old records from 200 years ago. When the humans rejected our diplomatic offer, we sent a fleet to forcibly integrate them. That fleet consisted of 50 ships. Not one returned. We assumed the humans destroyed themselves in the battle, taking our ships with them. The chamber fell silent. What are you suggesting? Velmoth asked. I am suggesting, Pelthar said carefully, that perhaps the humans did not destroy themselves. Perhaps they destroyed our fleet and then chose to hide. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Council members shouted. Military officers argued. Zixpora demanded Pelthar be removed for spreading panic. While the council argued, deeper in the Imperial Intelligence headquarters, another discovery was being made. Intelligence officer Drenzar sat at his console, his eyes fixed on gravitational sensor data. Something was wrong. The numbers did not make sense. He ran the calculations again, then a third time. Each time, the same impossible result appeared. Drenzar stood and walked quickly to his supervisor's office. Sir, we have a problem. His supervisor looked up. What kind of problem? The human ships, sir. They're not alone. The supervisor frowned. Explain. Drenzar pulled up his data. Our sensors can't see the human ships clearly, but we can detect their gravitational signatures. Each ship creates a distortion in space based on its mass. I've been analyzing these distortions. And? The 30 ships we can see should create a specific total gravitational reading, but the actual reading is much higher, at least 3 times higher. The supervisor stared at the numbers. You're saying there are more ships we can't see? Not just more, sir. Many more, possibly hundreds. They must have some kind of cloaking technology that hides them from our sensors, but they can't hide their mass from gravity detectors. Within minutes, this information reached Admiral Krentha. He read the report 3 times, his hands shaking slightly. If this was true, his fleet of 800 ships was not surrounding 30 human vessels. They were potentially outnumbered. He opened a secure channel to the Supreme Council. Council members, I am requesting permission to begin evacuation of nearby civilian populations. If this situation escalates, I want non-combatants out of the potential combat zone. Zixpora's face appeared on his screen. Absolutely not. That would show weakness. We will not back down from these primitives. With respect, Council member, they are not primitives. Not anymore. The argument continued for hours. Meanwhile, across the Empire, word of the human return was spreading. News networks broadcast images of the mysterious dark ships. Social media exploded with theories and fears. On border worlds, people began packing their belongings. Stock markets crashed. Trade routes were disrupted. Fear spread like a disease. Aboard the Horizon, Lisa Martin monitored all of this with satisfaction. "The information warfare phase is proceeding as planned," she reported to Captain Hamilton. "The Empire's civilian population is destabilizing. Their government is divided. Their military is uncertain." Greg nodded. "And we haven't fired a single shot. How long until the meeting?" "Council member Velmoth has requested face-to-face negotiations. He's convinced the others to agree. They want to meet on the neutral moon of Keeper 442. "Good," Greg said. "That's the first smart decision they've made. Prepare the diplomatic team. We'll take Kate Phillips and Nathan Cole." Lisa hesitated. "Sir, is it wise to meet with them? They may try to capture or kill our diplomats." Greg smiled slightly. "They can try, but I think once they see us face to face, they'll understand something important." "What's that, sir?" "That we're not the same humans they remember. We're not even close." On Valoria Prime, Council member Velmoth prepared for the meeting. He was old, even by Valorian standards, and he had lived through many crises. But something about this situation felt different. The humans were too calm, too confident. It reminded him of how a predator acts when it knows it has already won. He pulled up the old historical records again, reading about the first human contact 2 centuries ago. The reports described the humans as emotional, stubborn, but ultimately weak. Their technology was centuries behind the Empire. Their military was laughable, yet they had refused to join. They had sealed their borders. And when the Empire sent ships to force the issue, those ships had vanished. Velmoth had always assumed the official story was true, that the humans had destroyed themselves along with the Imperial fleet. But now, looking at the dark ships sitting so calmly in space, surrounded by 800 Imperial warships and showing no fear, he wondered, what if the humans had not destroyed themselves? What if they had simply been preparing? The thought terrified him. Admiral Krentha received another message from Fleet Command. The Supreme Council demanded he maintain aggressive posture. They wanted the humans to feel threatened. They wanted them to understand the Empire's power. Krentha looked at his tactical display. 800 ships against 30. On paper, it should be overwhelming, but his instincts, honed by centuries of combat, told him something different. He thought about the human response to his ultimatum. Do not interfere. Not a request, not a plea, a statement of fact delivered with absolute certainty. He had fought many enemies in his career. The desperate ones begged, the brave ones threatened, the foolish ones attacked. But the truly dangerous ones? They simply stated facts and waited for you to understand. The hour for the meeting was approaching. Krentha prepared his shuttle. He would go personally, along with diplomatic escorts. He needed to see these humans with his own eyes. As his shuttle left the command station, he looked back at the fleet he commanded. 800 ships, the pride of the Empire. The most powerful military force in known space. And yet, as he looked at those 30 dark human vessels sitting so still and silent in the void, he could not shake the feeling that his fleet was not the hunter. It was the prey. The neutral moon of Keeper 442 was small and barren, chosen specifically because it had no strategic value to anyone. A temporary structure had been built on its surface, a simple dome with basic life support and a large conference room. This was where the Empire and humanity would meet face to face for the first time in 200 years. Admiral Krentha arrived first, along with Council member Velmoth and a security team of 12 armed soldiers. They entered the dome and took their positions on one side of the long table. Krentha checked his weapon discreetly. The council had ordered him to come prepared for any outcome. "Do you think they will actually come?" Velmoth asked quietly. Krentha studied the empty chairs across from them. "They asked for this meeting. They will come." 10 minutes later, a human shuttle landed outside the dome. Krentha watched through the window as four figures emerged. They wore simple uniforms, dark blue with silver trim. No visible weapons, no armor. They walked across the moon's surface with steady, unhurried steps. The airlock cycled, and the humans entered. Krentha had seen images of humans before, but seeing them in person was different. They were bipedal, similar in structure to several other species, but their eyes were different, sharp, calculating. They looked at the Valorian delegation the way a scientist looks at an interesting specimen. The lead human was a tall man with gray hair and calm blue eyes. He stepped forward and spoke in perfect Valorian. "I am Captain Greg Hamilton of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. This is Commander Lisa Martin, Ambassador Kate Phillips, and Dr. Nathan Cole." Velmoth stood. "I am Council Member Velmoth of the Supreme Council. This is Admiral Krentha, commander of the fleet currently surrounding your ships." Greg smiled slightly. "Yes, we're aware of your fleet's position." They sat down, facing each other across the table. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension was thick enough to cut. Finally, Velmoth broke the silence. 200 years ago, your species sealed its borders and vanished. We believed you were extinct. Why have you returned now?" Kate Phillips leaned forward. She was a woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes. "Council member, we never left. We've been here the entire time, watching, learning, observing everything your empire has done." The Valorian delegation exchanged glances. Krentha spoke carefully. "That's impossible. We have monitoring stations throughout this region. We would have detected your presence." Lisa Martin pulled out a small data device and placed it on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing a map of the Empire's territory. Red dots marked locations across hundreds of systems. "These are your military installations," she said calmly. 347 major bases. We can name every commander, every ship stationed there, and every weapons system you possess." She tapped the device again. More information appeared. "These are your classified research facilities. The one on Valor 7 is working on improved shield technology. The one on Tarlax Prime is developing new weapons. The station near Betelgeuse is studying exotic matter." Krentha felt cold. These locations were top secret. Even he did not know about all of them. "How?" he demanded. Nathan Cole spoke for the first time. He was younger than the others, with a friendly face that did not match the disturbing words coming from his mouth. "We've had observation posts in your space for 2 centuries, Admiral. Small, cloaked stations that your sensors cannot detect. We've watched everything. Every war, every political decision, every technological development." Velmoth's hands trembled slightly. "Why? Why watch us for so long?" Greg Hamilton's expression grew serious. "Because 200 years ago you sent 50 warships to force us to join your empire. You did not ask. You did not negotiate. You simply assumed we would submit. We refused and you attacked." "Those ships were lost," Velmoth said quietly. "We assumed—" "You assumed wrong," Kate Phillips interrupted. "We destroyed your fleet, completely. Then we made a decision. We realized the galaxy was full of species like yours, empires that take what they want, civilizations that value power over cooperation. We decided that before we ever engaged with you again, we would need to be strong enough that no one could threaten us." Lisa Martin continued the explanation. "So we sealed our borders. We took our entire civilization and moved deeper into the Terran exclusion zone. We built. We researched. We advanced. For 200 years, while you fought your wars and expanded your empire, we focused solely on becoming better, stronger, more advanced." Admiral Krentha stared at the humans. 200 years of uninterrupted technological development. "Exactly," Greg said. "No wars to fight. No resources wasted on conquest. Every ship, every scientist, every resource dedicated to advancement. Do you understand what that means, Admiral? Krentha did understand, and it terrified him. The Empire spent most of its resources maintaining control, fighting rebels, and expanding territory. But a civilization that spent 200 years focused purely on progress would be unimaginably advanced. "What do you want?" Velmoth asked. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Kate Phillips stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "We have determined that your empire, while flawed, is not beyond redemption. We have studied your species, all 7 of them. You are capable of better than this authoritarian system. We are here to offer you a choice." "What choice?" Krentha asked, though he suspected he already knew. Greg Hamilton stood as well. "Change or be changed. Your empire must transition to a more equitable system. All species must have true representation. The council must become democratic, not authoritarian. You have 10 years to make these reforms." Velmoth's eyes widened. "And if we refuse?" Lisa Martin's voice was cold. "Then we will enforce it." Before anyone could respond, an alert sounded. One of Krentha's officers burst into the room. "Admiral, we have a situation. The colony at Kepler 442 has erupted in armed rebellion. They're threatening to execute Imperial citizens. Fleet Command is ordering us to respond." Krentha stood. "How many ships?" 40, sir. Deploying immediately." Greg Hamilton held up a hand. "Wait, we'll handle it." Everyone in the room turned to stare at him. "What?" Krentha asked. "Your colony crisis," Greg said calmly. "We'll resolve it. Consider it a demonstration." Velmoth shook his head. "This is an internal matter. We don't need—" "You don't understand," Kate Phillips said. "This isn't an offer. We're going to solve this problem. You can either watch and learn, or you can interfere and learn a much harder lesson." Greg tapped a device on his wrist. "Hamilton to Fleet. Send the Striker Group to Kepler 442. Rules of engagement. Non-lethal resolution. Show them what we can do." In orbit above the moon, 3 human ships detached from the main fleet. They were smaller than the others, sleek and fast. Within seconds, they vanished, jumping to faster-than-light speed. Admiral Krentha watched them go, his tactical mind racing. 3 ships. The Empire was sending 40. How could 3 ships possibly matter? "What are you going to do?" he asked. Lisa Martin smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "What we've spent 200 years learning to do, Admiral. We're going to solve problems without killing people. You should watch." "You might learn something." The meeting adjourned as both sides rushed to monitor what would happen at Kepler 442. Krentha returned to his shuttle with Velmoth, both of them silent. Finally, Velmoth spoke. "Do you believe them? That they've been watching us for 2 centuries?" Krentha thought about the classified information the humans had casually revealed. "Yes, I believe them. And that means everything we do, every strategy we have, every secret we keep, they already know about it." "Then we are already defeated," Velmoth said quietly. Krentha did not answer. He simply looked out at the 30 human ships, still sitting calmly in space, still surrounded by 800 Imperial warships, still showing no fear whatsoever. Somewhere out there, 3 human ships were racing to prove what 200 years of advancement could accomplish. The Empire was about to learn a very difficult lesson. The colony of Kepler 442 was in chaos. What had started as peaceful protests against imperial taxation had exploded into armed rebellion. The local garrison had been overwhelmed. Rebels now controlled the orbital stations and were holding 300 Imperial citizens hostage in the main government building. Admiral Krentha watched the situation unfold from his command ship. The Empire's response fleet of 40 warships was still 2 hours away from Kepler 442. Standard procedure would be orbital bombardment of rebel positions, followed by ground troops to secure the colony. Thousands would die. It was ugly, but it was how the Empire maintained order. Beside him, Council Member Velmoth watched the same displays. "How long until the human ships arrive?" "They jumped to faster than light 30 minutes ago," Krentha replied. "They should be arriving at Kepler 442 right about now." The displays suddenly flickered. New contacts appeared in the Kepler 442 system. 3 ships, exactly where the humans said they would be. The human vessels appeared above the colony planet without warning. They were smaller than the capital ships in the main fleet, but their arrival was perfectly calculated. Within seconds, they had positioned themselves in a triangular formation around the planet. Captain Julie Sanders commanded the lead ship. She was a veteran of 15 years in the Terran fleet, known for her precision and calm under pressure. She studied the tactical situation quickly. Rebel ships in orbit. Armed insurgents on the ground. Hostages in the central government building. A standard mess. "Scan everything," she ordered. "I want to know every weapon system, every armed person, every potential threat." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks worked his console. "Scanning complete. 18 rebel ships in orbit. Minimal weapons. Ground forces numbering approximately 5,000, armed with basic energy weapons and projectile firearms. Hostages are on the 3rd floor of the government complex." "Threat assessment?" Julie asked. "Low," Ryan replied. "These are civilians with military weapons, not trained soldiers. Their positions are poorly defended, but they're desperate, which makes them dangerous to the hostages." Julie nodded. "Prepare the pulse weapon. Single emission, wide dispersal. Target every weapon system in the orbital space and on the planet's surface." Back in Imperial space, Admiral Krentha watched his sensors carefully. The 3 human ships had not moved since arriving. They were simply floating in orbit, doing nothing visible, but his technical officers were reporting strange energy readings. "Sir, the human ships are charging some kind of weapon," his sensor officer reported. "Energy signature is massive, but I don't recognize the type." Krentha leaned forward. "How massive?" "Enough to destroy the entire planet, sir." Velmoth stood abruptly. "They're going to destroy the colony? The hostages?" "Wait," Krentha said. Something felt wrong. The humans had talked about non-lethal solutions. They would not destroy a planet, would they? On the lead human ship, Julie Sanders gave the order. "Fire." A pulse of energy erupted from all 3 human vessels simultaneously. It was not a beam or a projectile. It was something else entirely, a wave of exotic particles that spread across the entire planet in seconds. In orbit, the 18 rebel ships suddenly went dark. Every system shut down. Engines died. Weapons powered off. Life support switched to backup systems. The ships simply stopped working. On the ground, 5,000 armed rebels found their weapons turning off in their hands. Energy rifles went dead. Projectile guns locked up. Their firing mechanisms fused. Every military-grade weapon system on the entire planet shut down simultaneously. In the government building, the rebel leader stared at his weapon in disbelief. He pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Around him, his fighters were having the same experience. Panic spread through their ranks. Julie Sanders opened a communication channel that broadcast to every device on the planet. "This is Captain Julie Sanders of the Terran Fleet. All weapons on this planet have been permanently disabled. You cannot hurt the hostages. You cannot hurt each other. You have 1 hour to release all Imperial citizens and begin negotiations for a peaceful resolution. If you do not comply, we will disable your life support systems next." The threat was clear. The rebels could not fight, could not escape, and could not even maintain their own survival if the humans decided to escalate. Aboard Admiral Krentha's command ship, the sensor officer turned with a shocked expression. "Sir, every weapon on Kepler 442 just went offline. I'm reading 0 active military systems. The rebels are completely disarmed." "How?" Velmoth demanded. "How is that possible?" A young scientist named Pelthar was studying the energy readings. "The pulse weapon the humans used, I've never seen anything like it. It appears to have targeted specific molecular structures. Any device designed to harm living beings was disabled at a fundamental level. But life support, communications, civilian systems, all still functional. Krentha sat back in his chair, stunned. They disarmed an entire planet without killing anyone. The precision required for such a weapon, Pelthar continued, his voice shaking, would need technology centuries beyond our own. They would need to understand matter manipulation at a quantum level. This shouldn't be possible. But it was possible. And the humans had just demonstrated it. On Kepler 442, the rebel leader made a decision. Without weapons, his position was hopeless. He ordered his fighters to release the hostages and surrender. Within 30 minutes, all 300 Imperial citizens were safely freed. But the humans were not finished. Lieutenant Alex Turner, the diplomatic officer on Julie's ship, established contact with both the rebel leadership and the Imperial colonial governor. For the next 2 hours, he mediated a discussion between them. The rebels explained their grievances. Imperial taxes were crushing their economy. They had no representation in government. Their resources were being exploited with no benefit to local populations. The governor, to his credit, admitted that many of these complaints were valid. Alex Turner listened to both sides and then proposed a solution. Reduced taxation in exchange for continued Imperial membership. Local elections for a planetary council. Resource-sharing agreements that benefited the colony. It was not perfect, but it was fair. Both sides agreed. The crisis was resolved. Admiral Krentha watched all of this in silence. His 40 warships arrived at Kepler 442 2 hours later, ready to bombard and invade. Instead, they found a peaceful colony where rebels and Imperial forces were signing agreements. 3 human ships had accomplished in 3 hours what would have taken the Empire weeks and cost thousands of lives. Velmoth turned to Krentha. They could have destroyed us at any time. Krentha nodded slowly. That weapon they used. If they can disable every weapon system on a planet from orbit, they can do the same to our fleet. Every ship, every gun, every missile. They could render our entire military helpless without firing a single lethal shot. The implications were staggering. The Empire's military might was meaningless. Their weapons were useless. Their ships were targets. Everything they had built their power on could be taken away in an instant. Julie Sanders sent a final message to the Imperial fleet. Captain Sanders to Admiral Krentha. The situation at Kepler 442 has been resolved peacefully. No casualties. Both parties have agreed to terms. We are returning to the main fleet. We hope this demonstration has been educational. Educational? Krentha almost laughed at the word. Educational was one way to describe watching your entire military doctrine become obsolete in 3 hours. The 3 human ships jumped back to the main fleet, leaving the Imperial forces at Kepler 442 to manage the peaceful aftermath. Admiral Krentha returned to his command station and immediately called an emergency meeting with the Supreme Council. When all council members were present on the communications screen, Krentha spoke bluntly. Council members, I have witnessed something that changes everything. The humans possess technology that makes our military irrelevant. They can disable our weapons without destroying them. They can resolve conflicts without casualties. They can do things we cannot even understand. Zixpora's face was angry on the screen. One demonstration does not mean... It means everything, Krentha interrupted, something he had never done before to a council member. If they can disable weapons on a planet, they can disable weapons anywhere. Our fleet of 800 ships could be rendered helpless in seconds. Every military asset we have is meaningless. Velmoth spoke quietly. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Krentha looked at the council members, all of them powerful figures who had ruled through military might for centuries. I am suggesting that we are not in a standoff. We are not negotiating from a position of strength. We are, in fact, completely at their mercy. They have demonstrated this. The only question now is whether we accept their terms willingly, or whether they force us to accept them." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Valorian Empire faced an opponent they could not intimidate, could not threaten, and could not defeat. The humans had shown mercy at Kepler 442. But everyone understood the underlying message. This was not mercy from weakness. This was mercy from a position of absolute power. The Supreme Council was divided. Half wanted to negotiate with the humans. The other half wanted to strike before humanity could grow even stronger. Council member Zixpora led the aggressive faction, and her voice was the loudest in the chamber. "We are the Valorian Empire," she declared. "For 3,000 years we have ruled this galaxy. We will not bow to these upstart humans no matter what tricks they possess." Velmoth tried to reason with her. "You saw what they did at Kepler 442. They have technology we cannot match." "They have 30 ships," Zixpora countered. "We have 800 at that location alone. We have thousands more throughout the Empire. Even advanced technology cannot overcome such numbers." The council voted. By a narrow margin, they chose aggression. Admiral Krentha received his orders with a heavy heart. He was to attack the human fleet and destroy it completely. The council believed that removing these 30 ships would end the threat. Krentha tried one more time to change their minds. "Council members, I strongly advise against this action. We do not know the full extent of their capabilities." "Your objection is noted and rejected," Zixpora replied coldly. "You have your orders, Admiral. Follow them or be replaced." Krentha closed the communication channel and looked at his tactical officer. "Prepare the fleet for combat. All ships battle formation. Target the human vessels." Around the 30 human ships, 800 Valorian warships moved into attack positions. Weapons charged, shields activated. The entire fleet prepared to fire. On the horizon, Captain Greg Hamilton watched the Imperial fleet's movements with calm eyes. "They're actually going to do it." Lisa Martin nodded. "The aggressive faction won the vote. Should we send another warning?" Greg thought for a moment, then opened a channel that broadcast to every Imperial ship. "This is Captain Hamilton of the Terran Fleet. This is your only warning. Stand down immediately. You do not understand what you are facing." Admiral Krentha heard the warning. For a brief moment, he considered disobeying his orders. Then he thought of his duty, his oath to the Empire. He had followed orders for 300 years. He would follow them now. "All ships," he said quietly. "Fire." 800 Imperial warships opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked toward the 30 human vessels. It was enough firepower to destroy a small planet. The weapons never reached their targets. Every single weapon system shut down the moment it was fired. Beams died mid-flight. Missiles stopped dead in space. Every gun, every launcher, every directed energy weapon on 800 ships simply stopped working. In the command ship, Krentha stared at his weapons console in disbelief. Every indicator showed red, offline, disabled, useless. "What happened?" his weapons officer shouted. "Everything just died." Before anyone could answer, the sensors went wild. Ships were appearing everywhere, hundreds of them, thousands of them. They materialized from nothing, decloaking simultaneously throughout the entire Imperial fleet's formation. They had been there all along, invisible, waiting. Lisa Martin's voice broadcast across all channels. "You were warned. Now you will see the truth." The human fleet revealed itself fully. Not 30 ships, not hundreds. Thousands of vessels surrounded the Imperial fleet. They had been positioned at every strategic point, hidden by technology the Empire could not detect. The 800 Imperial ships were not surrounding the humans. They were trapped inside a human formation. Krentha felt his blood run cold. They had never been the hunters. From the very beginning, they had been the prey. More ships continued appearing throughout the Empire. Greg Hamilton's voice came through every communication channel. People of the Valorian Empire, hear this message. Your government has just attempted to destroy our fleet. Their weapons failed, not because we destroyed them, but because we disabled them remotely. Every weapon system in your entire fleet is now offline, permanently. On Valoria Prime, the Supreme Council watched in horror as reports flooded in. Human ships had appeared in every major system, at the capital world, at military bases, at colonial stations. They were everywhere, and they had been there the entire time. Zixpora stood frozen, unable to speak. The Empire's entire military, thousands of ships, tens of thousands of weapon systems, all disabled in an instant. Kate Phillips's voice joined the broadcast. 200 years ago, you sent ships to force us to join your empire. You did not ask permission. You did not negotiate. You assumed we would submit. We destroyed your fleet and made a choice. We would never be weak again. We would never be at the mercy of empires like yours. Nathan Cole continued. For 2 centuries we watched you. We saw your wars, your conquests, your treatment of lesser species. We documented everything. And while you fought and expanded, we advanced. We pushed the boundaries of science, of technology, of what was thought possible. Julie Sanders' voice, the captain who had resolved the crisis at Kepler 442, spoke next. We developed weapons that do not kill. Technology that disables rather than destroys. We learned to manipulate matter at a quantum level. We mastered energy systems you have not even theorized. We became something greater than you can imagine. Then Captain Greg Hamilton spoke again, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. Now we return to the galaxy, not to conquer, but to correct. Your empire is built on force and fear. You rule 7 species and dozens of minor ones, but you give them no voice, no choice, no freedom. This ends now. Throughout the Empire, on every inhabited world, holographic displays activated. The humans broadcast evidence of imperial corruption, secret orders to suppress peaceful protests, records of atrocities committed against conquered species, hidden agreements that exploited colony worlds. Everything the Empire had done in shadow was now exposed to light. Riots began on dozens of worlds, not against the humans but against their own government. The people of the Empire saw the truth and were outraged. Lisa Martin delivered the ultimatum. The Valorian Empire has 10 years to reform. You will dissolve your authoritarian council and establish democratic governance. Every species will have equal representation. All conquered worlds will be given autonomy. You will transition from an empire of domination to a federation of cooperation. If you refuse, she continued, we will enforce these changes. We have the power to disable every weapon you possess. We can shut down your infrastructure. We can isolate your worlds. We will not kill you, but we will force you to change. Aboard his disabled command ship, Admiral Krenthaw made a decision. He opened a direct channel to Captain Hamilton. Captain, this is Admiral Krenthaw. I am formally requesting a ceasefire and peace negotiations. The Empire's military is no longer functional. We cannot fight you. We surrender. It was the first time in 3,000 years that the Valorian Empire had ever surrendered to anyone. On Valoria Prime, the Supreme Council was in chaos. Zixpora was shouting, demanding they find a way to fight. But Velmoth stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Enough, he said quietly, but his voice carried. We have lost. Not because we are weak, but because we underestimated these humans. They have given us a choice, change willingly or be changed by force. I propose we choose the former. The vote was quick. Zixpora and her faction were outvoted. The council agreed to begin negotiations for reform. Over the following weeks, human representatives met with imperial leaders. Captain Hamilton, Ambassador Kate Phillips, and Dr. Nathan Cole worked with Velmoth and Admiral Krenthaw to design a new government structure. It would take years to fully implement, But the framework was established. Democracy would replace authoritarianism. Equality would replace domination. Cooperation would replace conquest. The human fleet remained visible throughout the empire, a constant reminder that humanity was watching. Thousands of ships, each one more advanced than anything the empire possessed. Silent guardians ensuring the changes would take place. 3 months after the confrontation, Greg Hamilton stood on the bridge of the horizon, looking out at Valoria Prime. Lisa Martin joined him. "The transition is beginning," she reported. "Elections are being scheduled on 17 worlds. The Council is drafting a new constitution." "It's actually happening." Greg nodded. "Admiral Krentha is a good man. He understands what needs to change. With him leading the transition government, there's hope." "Do you think they'll really change?" Lisa asked. "Or will they just wait until we leave and go back to their old ways?" Greg smiled slightly. "That's why we're not leaving. Our fleet will remain here watching, maybe for 10 years, maybe for a century, however long it takes to ensure the changes are permanent." Lisa looked at the thousands of human ships spread throughout the Empire. "We came back to change the galaxy." "No," Greg corrected. "We came back to give the galaxy a chance to change itself. We're just making sure they take that chance." Far below, on the surface of Valoria Prime, former Council member Velmoth met with Admiral Krentha in what used to be the Supreme Council chamber. It was being converted into a democratic assembly hall. "Do you think we can really do this?" Velmoth asked. 3,000 years of empire, gone in a moment." Krentha looked at the construction work around them. "The empire was built on the idea that power is the only thing that matters. The humans have shown us that true power is not the ability to destroy, but the ability to choose mercy when you could destroy. They could have wiped us out. Instead, they are giving us a chance to be better." "A terrifying kind of mercy," Velmoth observed. "Yes," Krentha agreed, "but mercy nonetheless. We should be grateful for it, and we should not waste it." Above them, the human fleet remained in position, silent, watchful, waiting to see if the Empire would choose to evolve or if they would need to be reminded of the lesson humanity had taught them. The humans had returned to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same.